Cageside with Sean Morgan.
And welcome back, second episode of 2024. This is Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. PFL and Bellator are breaking some news early this week. We'll go over that. Ankalaev, he looks like he's destined for a title shot. Looks impressive this past weekend from the Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. And which I feel we'll spend most of our time today. UFC 297 from Toronto, Canada. Strickland versus DDP. The man to help me break it all down. Follow him on Twitter, John Morgan _MMA. He's that pretty face right there. John Morgan, what's up, pal?
I'm good, man. You know, we always talk about it. When it's a pay-per-view week, it's something a little bit extra, right? There's a little bit of energy in the air. I mean, you know, we kind of eased back into the UFC schedule with this past week's card. It was good, as you said, some statements made in there. But, man, you start putting UFC titles on the line. You start putting in some tension between the two combatants in the main event. We start to get fired up. So it's good. We're getting the year going.
Before we dive into UFC, which, you know, really this show was very heavy UFC because of the premier promotion, but we haven't talked Bellator or PFL a lot lately, really because we didn't know what was going on, right? And so we're not going to speculate all too much, but as of today, a press release came out. In February, they are going to have a champion versus champion card from Saudi Arabia, I see.
Yeah. This is a big moment for them. I mean, this was the thing that had kind of been teased for a while, that they were going to put these champions versus champions together. Of course, PFL acquired Bellator late last year. That was made official. But you said it had been kind of quiet, right? Because the PFL season was over, and we were waiting on the announcements for Bellator and what was going to happen, and kind of knew this was coming together. But, man, I think the news for PFL/Bellator is about to come hot and heavy for a while. I talked to Pete Murray last week, the PFL CEO. He did confirm, listen, there will be 8 Bellator events this year, mostly international, but some in the United States as well. Those titles will be defended. Everything will happen, but it will kick off with this, which has now been made official. Going to the Middle East, they got some big investment money over there in Saudi Arabia. So that's helping fuel their expansion. They're going to have a Middle Eastern league this year as well. So a lot going on, but it's going to kick off with this February 24th event, which is on paper, I got to be honest with you, looks like a lot of fun. I mean, this is what the acquisition was about, right? Is getting these additional names, these additional fighters, and matching them up together. And, you know, it's going to be a pay-per-view event, but it looks like it's one that's going to be I'm excited for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, obviously headlining the card is going to be PFL heavyweight champion Fiera, but versus Bellator heavyweight champion Ryan Bader. Mm-hmm. We kind of talked really quick right before we jumped on about kind of the reasoning of having champion versus champion. And as you said, I don't know why it got stuck in my head that Bellator would be around for 2 years. You just then now stated, a 1 year. But so I posed the question, why do this now? Because if we're going to run 2 independent brands for a while, I don't know, my business hat I put on and I just say, well, we're going to convolute the 2 right away. I don't know what the reasoning. And then you gave me your opinion right before. What is your opinion on why they would be doing this now?
Well, I think you nailed it, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense to try, if you're going to try to run 2 simultaneous brands separate against each other, why would you put them together? And I just, to be honest with you, I don't think they're going to try to run those 2 brands separately too terribly long, if we're being honest. And I think this just goes to show it right away. I mean, look, we've seen it before. The UFC, they bought Pride. They said they were going to operate Pride. They didn't. They bought the WC. They tried to operate WC for a while, but you just run into these issues, right? Same thing with Strikeforce. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why am I doing it? I think you nailed it with, a business operator. If I'm doing all that I can to create brand awareness and to create, people knowing about when my events are and when they can watch them and how they can watch them and why they want to tune in, why would I then go do that separately for another brand as well? It's just incredibly challenging. It's hard to do. So, listen, 1 year, 2 years, it's not out of the equation that it happened for a couple of years. But I just think eventually they're just not going to continue to operate the Bellator brand. I may be wrong in that assumption, but I just think everybody ends up kind of running into the same challenges and the same issues. And you realize it's just too difficult to do. So, listen, you're going to put them together right away. They are going to be separate brands for this year. The PFL has their season format that they like to do, which is unique, right? You get your regular season matchups. There's no politics in the matchmaking. If you win, you make your way into the playoffs. If you win in the playoffs, you advance to the championships. It's just like every other professional sports league out there. Meanwhile, Bellator, there they have, the matchmaking that they want to do, and they put the fights that they want to put together. I love this kickoff. I just think it's a sign of kind of what's to come eventually. I just don't think we're going to see Bellator around too terribly long.
So if we think they're both going to, or if we think that Bellator is going to be shut down or absolved completely, is the reason for running shows for, the next 8 shows, is that contract driven?
Yeah, I think so. It really, you've got sponsorship, you've got like venue deals that you may have signed, you've got previous business relationships in there that may get complicated, right? If you don't deliver on what you've promised. If somebody's already written you a check for some money and you promised to deliver on some stuff and it didn't get done, now you're talking about some litigation and things of that nature. So yeah, that's kind of my understanding, is there's just some existing agreements in place that necessitate, to continue to operate for the time being.
Understood. That's what I would assume as well. But hey, fun matchups on the horizon. As True Blue hardcore MMA fans, I look forward to the best fighting the best. And so, as long as we can merge 2 of the 3 and have the best fighting the best out of those 2, I'm here for it.
I love it. You look at the card that they announced today. I mean, you mentioned right at the top, Renan Fajeda versus Ryan Bader. That's a fun matchup, right? I mean, 2 really, really good heavyweights. Impa Kasanganay versus Johnny Eblen. That's a great fight there. Magomed Ankalaev versus Jason Jackson. Jesus Pinedo versus Patricio Pitbull. Those are all matchups that we expected to see because they said, look, it's going to be champion versus champion. But, man, I look at the rest of this card that they put on there. Bruno Capolosa versus Vadim Nemkov, former champ versus former champ. Thiago Santos versus Yoel Romero. I mean, Maheta and Yoel Romero, like
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I mean that's just a fight we just threw on there. You know what I mean? Clay Collard and AJ McKee. That'll be a fun fight. And then you go to the prelims. Gabriel Braga versus Aaron Pico. Gotta love to see Pico in there. And Braga is super talented.
Pico's on the prelims. That's how strong of a card that is.
That's how loaded this card is. Biagio Ali Walsh is going to make his pro debut. Clarissa Shields is going to be on there as well. So it's going to be a daytime event here in the United States. It's February 24th. As you said, it's going to take place in Saudi Arabia. Prime time there, which means daytime here. So it will be a pay-per-view. I know that's a tough one, man. Pay-per-view cards for the PFL. I know that's a tough ask, but they're trying to get into that market. And it'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern. Prelims will be on ESPN News, ESPN Plus at noon. So it's a nice, Saturday afternoon card. I always like something in the day that you can watch. So
what a good great addition for ESPN Plus, though. Golly.
Yep. It's a great fight card. So I love this. I'm excited for the announcement. I think it's fun. You're going to see matchups you wouldn't have been able to see before now. You're going to put those together. Again, these champion versus champion matchups. We'll see. Again, they say it's going to be an annual affair. We'll see how long they decide to run Bellator, but we know it's going to happen for at least a couple years, and I'm here for it, man. I like this card. I like what they put together. This was the idea. Let's get these names. Let's match them up. Let's create some big fights that people are talking about.
Yep, let's jump right into what happened this past weekend at the Apex Center in Las Vegas. Magomed Ankalaev takes out Johnny Walker by second round. TKO, KO, I don't know. They all blend together, but it was a vicious stoppage in that second round. And truth be told, it was a fun, exciting round and a half. Johnny Walker comes out there and shows why you like to watch Johnny Walker. He's throwing question mark kicks. He's just charging forward. To me, it looked like we got a little bit of early days Johnny Walker. And in his head, I'm just surmising, he says, listen, I'm throwing everything at the wall early. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go out on my – if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out on my shield. And, hey, I take my hat off to Johnny Walker, even in defeat, because he laid it all on the line Saturday night.
Yeah, that's what you want to see, right? I mean, Johnny Walker, he's got a little bit of chaos in his game, and you want to see that. It's such a weird balance, right? Because you try to rein that in a little bit. You don't want to be wild too much and put yourself in bad positions, but sometimes that's where your strength lies. You know what I mean? And Johnny Walker is just, what a huge dude he is, right? Like Magomed Ankalaev is a big dude at light heavyweight, and Walker made him look tiny in there, right? He's just a big frame, very incredibly athletic, has the ability to, as you said, be creative, do surprising things. And he tried, he tried to make something happen. He went out there, but it's just, Ankalaev, I just think is on a little bit different level, man. He just really is, to me. I mean, championship caliber. I think that lies in his future. He just seems to be in that little exclusive tier at the top. You know, you have really, really good fighters, and Johnny Walker is a really good fighter. He's going to be a problem. Johnny Walker is a problem for anybody he goes against. But Ankalaev, man, the guy just looks like he's a little bit cut above, and I think there's some big fights lined up for him in the very near future.
I mean, I think he's definitely on a fast track to a title shot. I want to go back to the fight, though, really quick, because it, you know, at what's Ankalaev's record? 17-1-1 now. At that point, I mean, he's very seasoned, fought tough guys, and he essentially just said, "Give me what you got, early, and then I'm gonna put the gas pedal down on you." And essentially, that's what happened, right? There was a point, and I noticed this, and I don't know if you noticed it. I have no idea if it had any impact on the fight. But maybe with about, I don't know, a minute and a half left in that first round, Johnny Walker was heavy with leg attacks early, doing a lot of crazy kicks. He threw a heavy leg kick at Ankalaev, and it got checked really hard. And I didn't see that much after that. And then that's when Johnny Walker started moving backwards. And for any of you who out there who have never had your leg kick checked, it's a game changer when it's a vicious check. And I saw that happen. And then right after that, Johnny Walker was like, I might not be pushing forward as much anymore after that one. Did you see that changed?
Absolutely. That does change everything. And I kind of felt that as well. You see those big checks like that, and you said it, man. And unless you felt it, you don't know exactly what it's like. But it changes everything in terms of, A, your willingness to continue throwing that weapon, right? But even just B, your ability to plan and put weight on it and to move forward and to make adjustments. And, you know, I think so much of Johnny Walker's game is that movement and is that creativity and doing things a little bit different. So I think it probably had something to do with it. And then I think you nailed it too with Ankalaev, man. That dude is just so calm under fire, just experience in there. Doesn't look like he's bothered by anything. And then when he turns it on, that dude has that one shot power, man. One moment is all it takes for him to land something big. And as you said, just a brutal finish. That second right hand on the ground was just vicious. And I know Johnny looked a little bit frustrated at the stoppage, but I had no problem with it whatsoever. He was out for a moment, and that was big punishment.
Yeah, when you physically react in pain and turn away, hey, Mark Goddard, you've been criticized a few times by some people. Past couple stoppages, great stoppage. Man,
yeah, nailed it.
You're not going to let Johnny Walker take another shot after he gets blasted with that second right hand. Literally covers his face in pain, not to protect, in pain, and turns away.
Yeah, and you I think that's such a great observation of, you know, these guys are professional fighters. That's what they do. They're used to that, right? They're used to being in those positions. And when they cover up like any man on the street would because they're in pain at that point, they're no longer reacting in a sporting manner, right? That's self-preservation at that point. And when you see self-preservation in there, that's when the fight is over.
Yeah, and Ankalaev, essentially after weathering the storm and really not taking any damage in that storm. I think he did get hit with one question mark kick, and it was more of a grazing blow. Just now it's my turn to press forward. And then in that exchange, that right hand happened that knocked down Johnny Walker. And theoretically, it could have been stopped right there because he kind of went out flat. Mark Goddard couldn't get in there, and that follow-up was vicious.
Yes, it was. And man, I just, you know, I've been so impressed by Ankalaev. And, you know, he doesn't speak English. And so I think, you know, that's one thing that it kind of slows down marketing. It slows down like fan connecting to athletes because they're not really getting to hear from him. But, you know, I think the dude's a great fighter. I mean, the split draw with Jan Blachowicz, I mean, he could potentially already be a champion, but you had that weirdness in that fight. But I just don't think you can keep denying him much longer, man. I think he's in that discussion, and a title shot has to come his way sooner rather than later.
Okay, so let's recap the logjam at 205 right now, because this is where things get murky, right? So you have Alex Mejia as the undisputed. He's not even in it. He's undisputed.
Nope. Correct.
Okay, and then now we have Jamal Hill, who is saying he's coming back, but I haven't heard any timeline for him. Have you heard of a timeline for him yet?
I haven't. And I think that's where there's a big question mark right here as to what exactly happens, because as you're going to continue to lay out, I mean, Jamal Hill has been told, hey, listen, man, You were kind enough to give up your belt due to injury. When you come back, you will fight for it right away. We believe in you. You're that guy. But it's all going to come down to that schedule.
Right. And so then now let's take one step further back. You have Yuri Prochazka right there in the mix. You know, he's a fun guy to watch. And we got Ankalaev now. And so theoretically, we got 4 guys vying for that top spot who all have a rightful claim. Like, to me, I really think that Yuri Prochazka in the meantime could have claim for another a rematch at it. You know, Pahea, the guy's just a savage beast. I mean, he as the champion, he could sit out for a while. I think that could happen. And so I think depending on Jamal Hill being the outlier here, do we think we see possibly a Yuri and Ankalaev title eliminator?
See, that's the question mark, right? Because if Jamal Hill is ready to go, he's been told he'll get that next shot. Now, if Jamal Hill's not ready to go, if this injury is taking a little bit longer, it seems like it's going to be a little more time. At that point, to me, you go straight to Magomed Ankalaev and you give him that opportunity. Now, I don't know if, UFC brass is still a little sour on him. I know that they weren't happy after the Jan Blachowicz fight with either guy, to be honest with you, but the man has come back, and that was an impressive performance against Johnny Walker. He was willing to take the rematch after the weird no contact. I just don't think you can deny him. So I think he's there. But if Jamal Hill's ready to go, you put Jamal Hill in there, I do wonder what you do at that point. And if you're the UFC, that's probably the fight I make, right? Is I go, hey, man, let's do Prochazka versus Ankalaev, #1 contender fight. Maybe it's on the same card as like a backup type situation, or, that could easily headline a fight night or be a co-main event on a pay-per-view card. That's a big fight. You know what I mean? It really is a meaningful fight. But if you're Ankalaev, do you feel like you need to do that? Do you say, oh, come on, man, like, I don't know that I need to take that fight right away. And I don't know. That would be an interesting position. If you're trying to maneuver your career, you want as few hurdles on the way to those title shots as you can, right? Just because anything can happen in a fight. You can slip up and you can lose. But conversely, if you want to make sure there's no denial whatsoever that you're the guy that deserves that opportunity, that you're the guy that deserves to be in there, then you take that fight. So I think that's a very real possibility of a fight, assuming everybody involved is interested and says, yes, I'm willing to take on those challenges.
In a weird way, when I say style makes fight, I'd be like, you know what? Like, Sean Strickland had the style to beat Izzy, right?
Right.
Pahea had the style to beat Prochazka in that type of thing. I think any of those 3 have the style to beat each other. Like, I don't, in a weird way, I don't think any of them be like, oh, I'm particularly fond. This is a great matchup for me. I want to fight this guy next.
I agree. I think those are all dangerous matchups, and that's exactly why I said, if you're Magomed Ankalaev, you might want to sit back and say, I don't know that I need to face Yuri Prochazka. Like, I feel like I've done enough here that I've already made my case, and I would understand it. I mean, listen, look, every fighter, we've talked about this before, and we'll say it always. Nobody is afraid of anybody, right? Nobody on the UFC roster is afraid of anybody else on the UFC roster. They all know that they're elite level athletes. They're incredibly talented fighters. They're great martial artists, and they believe they can compete with anybody. But you just said it. Styles make fights. There's certain times where you look at a guy and you're like, man, that guy really produces a lot of risk for me. And when you're talking about title shots and title opportunities, that's where the real money comes, right? That's when you become a pay-per-view partner and you start getting points on the pay-per-views, and that's where the real big money comes. So when you start getting there, then you do start making kind of calculated risks. Early on, you got to take the fights that get you up to the top. But once you get to the top, then you start to play a little bit of a chess match, right? And you say, well, hold on. I'm trying to move this piece because I want to be over here. So I agree. It's an exciting time in the division. It's unique, right? Because there's always this thing about, what do you value more? Like, what's more fun? Is it more fun when you have a dominant champion and you know who the top of the division is and everybody's trying to chase after that one guy, a la Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, Demetrius Johnson, John Jones, those guys that were just long reigning champions and everybody was coming after them? Or do you enjoy it when there's a little bit of chaos? Where, as you said, like, I think on any given night, any of those guys can beat each other, right? And so it makes it, I find that to be a little bit exciting as well. I do like long reigning champions because you really start to establish greatness and dominance and see somebody that's building a legacy. But it's exciting too, because what's the most fun fights? And I think for me and you, the most fun fights are the ones where you look at it and you're like, dude, I don't know who's going to win that. Like, it could go either way. Like, I'm excited. So I think that's what you got at the top of the division right now. You got a lot of names that can all be put together. And I would say from the UFC perspective, it's probably nice because you know that if for some reason, one guy's not ready to go, we got another couple guys that are ready to go that'll be just as fun as well. So it probably makes, scheduling for them a little bit easier.
Yeah, so remains to be seen what's going to happen with that log jam. Who's not being forthcoming in the Jamal Hill timeline?
I just don't think, it's one of those things you can't rush back from, right? It just is.
No, I understand that, but who's not giving the update? Is it the UFC not giving the update? Is it Jamal Hill not giving the update?
I think, yeah, it's a little bit of both. I think they're just kind of like hoping that we're ready by this time, but you know how that goes. Well, I'm ready to go if the money's right, or maybe I'm not ready to go if the money's not right. You know what I mean? You got to play that chess out there. So I know he wants to get back, man. I know he's training and doing all the rehab and doing everything he can. I know he wants to get back there as soon as possible. So,
and he looked genuinely offended when they were putting on the belt on Bahia.
Right? He's like, that's my belt. What are they doing with my belt in there? Right? I mean, as nice as he was to step aside, he did look a little bit like, damn.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the co-main event because Jim Miller does Jim Miller. Third round submission over Gabriel Benitez. Face crank submission, So the timeless wonder, Jim Miller, does it again. And this guy, listen, he ain't fighting the top of the division now, but he's 36-17. That is insanity.
That is absolute insanity. You talk about, man, debuting in the UFC in 2008, and here he is 15 plus years later, still on the UFC roster. It's incredible, man. And such a good dude. And listen, I mean, all the records are there, man. The most, wins in UFC history and the time, it's just the fight. It's incredible the numbers that he's been able to put up. And for him to still be at it, going at it, and performing at an incredibly high level. As you said, maybe not a top contender. We're not talking about title shots and rankings and those sort of things, but to be on the UFC roster for 15 plus years, man, it's just absolutely incredible, especially in the lightweight division, which is stacked. I mean, the lightweight division has always been one of the most talent-rich divisions, and here he is, 5-1 in his last 6 fights, getting finishes. I mean, every one of those wins is a finish, submission or knockout. So the guy can do it. I'm excited to see him on UFC 300. And listen, man, I've had this argument a couple times, but to me, man, that dude is a UFC Hall of Famer. And I'm surprised, to be honest.
Longevity alone.
Longevity alone deserves something, man. I'm surprised that there's as much pushback as there is out there. People saying, nah, that kind of waters it down. Like, just to me, man, I'll be honest. If you have the most games in any sport in the world, to me, you deserve to be in that sports Hall of Fame. If you've done it more than anybody else in history, you are part of the Hall of Fame of that sport. And when it's this sport, when it's this game, man, where there are no guarantees whatsoever, the UFC can release you from your contract at any time. Injuries happen all the time. I mean, you're surviving generations of fighters coming in and out of the UFC. I'm surprised it's even a discussion, to be honest with you. That man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
He fought the Bronx in 2010 in the UFC.
That's insane.
Charles Oliveira in 2010. Nate Diaz. I mean, I was just kind of looking at it. Gray Maynard. Mark Danzig. Remember that guy?
Of course. I mean, you're going back your time. I'm running through the list now, just looking at it as well.
Frankie Edgar outside of the UFC.
How crazy is that, right? I mean, come on. Yeah, this man has gone through generations, came through CFFC as well,
Ludwig.
So
Wayne
obviously
Ludwig.
got some passion there. Bang Ludwig. I mean, come on, dude. It's just fun, man. He's a piece of history, man. He's a piece of UFC history. He fought on UFC 100. He fought on UFC 200, and now he's saying, get me a spot in April. Let me be on UFC 300 as well. What a cool accomplishment that would be. And, by every conversation we've ever had with UFC CEO Dana White, he says, yeah, if that guy wants to be on 300, we'll put him on 300. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in April.
He came out relatively injury-free, so he should be on there. I don't know if he's a main card, but it don't matter.
Nah. Yeah, you're right. For 300, man, that card, they're going to stack it from top to bottom. They're already filling it up. I think he'll probably be on the prelims, but that's just fine, man. But the fact that you could be on those cards is crazy, man. To go from UFC 100 in 2009 all the way to UFC 300 in 2024, that's insane. So, man, I love Jim Miller's a fighter. In fact, I mean, just the fact that we know he was aiming for UFC 300 in April, but they offered him a fight in January, and he said, Yeah, I'll take that. I know I want to be on the 300, but no, I'm a fighter. Fighters fight. I'll take that fight.
I don't know what's more impressive, honestly, and I say this not joking. I don't know what's more impressive. Him fighting on 100, 200, and potentially 300, or me watching live 100, 200, and I assume going to be 300. I mean, that shows my fandom too.
We're veterans in there as well, right? Come on, we're on that same ground with you, Jim Miller.
So you got Jim Miller, John Morgan, and Eric McMahon. We're all vying for that longevity spot.
All right there, man. Yeah, we've been around just as long. That's so true.
Yeah. So let's move to the big dog. You ready to talk about this?
Come on, let's go.
UFC 297 this weekend, Toronto, Canada, pay-per-view. Sean Strickland, Dricus Du Plessis, champion versus the number 2 contender in the world. This kind of shocked me a little bit. Strickland's a minus 130 favorite.
Interesting. Okay. Well, it's not significant. Were you thinking pick him, or were you thinking Dricus might even be a little bit favored, or were you thinking Sean deserves more respect than that?
I thought it was going to be a pick him, or Dricus was going to be like that minus 105.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. It's because I don't think Sean Strickland, and maybe it is now, right? I don't think Sean Strickland's style gets the respect it deserves because be honest, it's not an MMA style. He defies the odds every time. Philly shell boxing with a weird Muay Thai stance, waist down.
Yep.
It defies logic.
It really is, man. And that's the way I describe it as well, because that's exactly what it looks like. You know what I mean? He's got that Philly shell boxing up top. He's, shoulder roll, head movement, avoid taking any big shots. And then he's got that lead leg lifting like a Muay Thai style. Like, you pop out the teep kick at any point. And it's not what you would coach. It's something that's been developed, and that man has mastered it. It works for him. Like, would I take a young fighter and be like, hey, man, see this style right here? Like, mimic this exactly, and you'll be great. Like, no, they're never in a million years. But this is a dude in Sean Strickland that just has perfected his craft through just endless amounts of sparring, right? I mean, he's not like let's drill, and go through reps like that. He's like, let's just get in there and fight. I'm going to get better at fighting through fighting. It's kind of an old school mentality, but it has definitely worked for him.
I heard something, and I heard this on the Joe Rogan podcast, and Joe Rogan talks about it like all the time. If you ever listen to him, especially when they have fighters on, and they always get into the debate of sparring or not sparring. A lot of fighters are moving away from sparring, whereas Strickland doesn't drill and exclusively spars. That's how he trains. Yep. But the UFC did some sort of study where they censored, I don't know, a headgear or something. And out of all the athletes that they studied that sparred, even though Sean Strickland literally sparred 10x more than the other people, he got hit the least.
Wow. I had not heard that. That's interesting. That's very intriguing. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, listen, always say, like, if you're a young fighter, you got to spar early in your career. You have to. Like, to me, there's just no getting around it. You've got to get in there and get used to the feel of live action, what it feels like to get hit, you know what I mean? Not to panic in those situations, to still work on your game plan and all those things. But you do hear, as people get older, a lot of the athletes will say, look, man, I don't want to spar. I don't want to leave rounds in the gym, basically, right? It's like, I don't want to take damage that I could be taking when I'm actually getting paid out there in a fight in a gym. And so I'm not going to do that. And other guys will be like, well, I'll spar, but I'll only spar with my trusted training partners, right? Like, I'm not going to go with some of these new guys that, somebody's going to come in there wild, trying to prove a point, trying to prove that they went with the big bad UFC fighter. So everybody's approach is different, but Sean absolutely has that old school mentality. He just wants to get in there and spar all the time. He wants to fight all the time. And that's interesting to hear that, it just goes to show how effective that style is, which is what it's about. It's like, look, Sean, I mean, hey, he clipped Israel Adesanya pretty good in their meeting, right? But you don't think about Sean as like that one-shot knockout power kind of guy. But what you do think about is a guy that's just hard to track down, going to keep in your face, not going to give you any time to think, going to be relentless. And, man, that stat bears it out, the fact that he's sparring that much and not getting touched.
These are converging styles going to come to a collision course on Saturday night. And they're both striking heavy, right? But I'm going to pose the question to you because I think this, at least early, is going to dictate who has the advantage in this fight. I really don't know how this fight's going to go. I assume early it's going to be one way, late it'll be the other. but I've assumed that with Dricus a lot of times, and a lot of times I've been wrong. But who moves backwards first? I think that's where this fight is going to be made.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I mean, you think of Dricus Du Plessis, you think of this kind of just, juggernaut, wild man, powerful guy. As you said, heavy hands. We'll grab a hold of you and throw you to the ground if he can, and we'll beat up on you there. And so you think about two guys that are both trying to impose their will, like in different ways, though, right? That's why I think it is so exciting, because this does. I can genuinely see this fight going either way, and that's what excites me about it so much. Well, I think that's a great observation, because I think you're right. Because if Dricus comes in and is that juggernaut, and he's able to get Sean Strickland on the back foot and press him up against the cage, and Sean's not able to kind of implement what he likes to do, that can be problematic. But meanwhile, if Sean Strickland just keeps that stiff jab out there and says, dude, I've been in there with everybody, nobody scares me, you're not going to run up on me, you know what I mean? I'm just going to keep you at the end of this punch. That could change things as well. So I'm fired up for this fight.
Listen, I love that you're very diplomatic, Mr. Morgan, but you didn't answer my question.
So you want me to evaluate who I think takes a step back first?
Yes.
If I'm gonna be honest with you, I think Sean Strickland is the one that ends up on his back foot first. I think that force of nature that is DDP will come out and have some early success. The key will be, to me, is does Sean survive that? And he's certainly capable of it, right? But when your brain gets knocked, it gets knocked, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? He's not going to wilt in terms of his character or his desire. But if Dricus Du Plessis is able to clip you, or is able to get you down and pound on you, that can be problematic. So I do believe Dricus Du Plessis is going to have early success. What I'm wondering is where that success stops, and what Sean's able to do during that time, and what happens from there. So that's what I said. I do believe Sean will be the one on his back foot first, but what happens after that is what will dictate what happens in the fight.
I agree with you, and you kind of forged the pathway of which I wanted to go down here, because let's go back 2 fights ago for Sean Strickland, right? The fight that eventually led him to a title shot. Me and you were both there in the Apex Center. Oh gosh, I'm screwing Magomedov. Different Magomedov.
Supian right? Magomedov.
I couldn't pronounce the first name, so I just
Magomedov.
So he came out really pressing Strickland very heavy in that fight, was diving for the takedowns, got the takedowns on 2 separate occasions, I believe, in that first round. But you have to work extremely hard to get there. And then Sean Strickland is wildly effective at getting up. And literally, he understands the most simple basics of the ground game of, like, listen, I'm not trying to be jiu-jitsu. I'm not trying to be anti-jiu-jitsu. I am trying to, listen, use all your energy, and I'm going to get up and then start pounding your face again. And it's as simple as just posting and pushing the guy's head down. And he is brilliant at that. That's what he did in that fight. So he got taken down twice in that first round. A lot of that gas tank is spent doing that, and then the tide turns. So I say all that to say this. Dricus, I do believe, is going to come out like that juggernaut, and he's going to be herky-jerky-esque. All can be. It's going to be hard to get timing, but I do believe his ultimate goal may be to – I don't think – he doesn't want to stand with Sean for 5 rounds. I just don't believe that.
I agree.
I think he's going to want to get him to the ground. If he gets him to the ground, at what cost? And then can he keep him there?
That's a huge question. That's what's so intriguing about this, right? Because Dricus Du Plessis, we've never seen go 5 rounds. He's been scheduled in 5-round fights. Like, he was a champion in organizations outside of the UFC, but he's never gone 5 rounds. Meanwhile, Sean Strickland, we think of as the guy with the kind of the never-ending gas tank, right? The dude that'll just go forever, and he's not, moving around Dominic Cruz style or anything like that. But I mean, he's very effective. As you said, he's so comfortable in the fights, right? It just doesn't seem like his heart rate gets elevated. It doesn't seem like he burns energy, and he understands everything that he does has real value in it. As you said, basics, right? Like post, press down on the head, break the grip, turn inside, back away, and reset. You know what I mean? It's all very, very basic. So I agree with you. I think your assessment is spot on, and that's what I'm so excited about. I don't think Dricus, as powerful as he is, wants to turn this into a kickboxing match, because I think Sean Strickland is a little bit more technical. Now, DDP has more power, I think, and has the ability to land those big shots, but Sean is hard to track down. He's hard to punch, right? He does a great job with that, wild style that he has. So what's the easiest way to negate that? It's through the ground game, and Dricus Du Plessis does have big takedowns, big power. He's a menace when he's on top of you. And I think that's exactly where he wants to do damage. And so, if he can get it there, and as you said, at what cost does he get it there? And is he able to maintain it there? And, does it happen in round 2? But oh my gosh, then we got to start back on the feet in round 3. And then we got to start back on the feet in round 4. And then we got to start back on the feet in round 5. And is the energy still there? And, Dricus has been, criticized for his energy level, right? And he's talked about the fact that he had to have this nasal surgery that opened up his breathing patterns. And he said, look, I was never really tired, but I admit it looked like I was exhausted because I'm, mouth wide open. I'm like, but he's like, I promise you I wasn't, but I know it looked that way, but now it won't even look that way. So yeah, man, I really do believe Dricus is going to have some success early, but that to me is where the fight starts. You know what I mean? And then we see what happens. And, can he dominate with that early success, or does he start to fade a little bit? And does Sean find a way? Because Sean's not going to go away, man. That dude fights. So I'm excited by this. And what's fun about this, Eric, is we're talking about how excited we are about this. And all we're talking about is the technical stylistic breakdown, right? Now we're not even talking about like all, the history that they have together. And
we're going to get there, Mr. Morgan. Don't worry about that.
That just adds that little.
He's going to stab him. He just said he's going to stab him. All right, so we're going to get there, But, I'm a huge pro wrestling, so I love storylines, but I'm a nerd for this sport too, right? Yep. So I do want to, and so this path that we've carved is the very likely scenario, right?
Yep.
Dricus is going to come out herky-jerky, throwing big haymakers. It's probably going to put Sean on his back foot for a moment. Will he go for a takedown in round 1 or 2? If I was Dricus, I'd say, hey, I don't think the strikes are going to hurt you overly too much in round number 1. Let's feel it out. Round 2, let's go for the takedown, right?
Yep.
That's if I was advising him. But with all that being said, at what cost? And we talked about all that. Here is where the real interesting scenario happens for me is, and you don't even have to be tired. You just could reset for 1 second, and that changes the fight into Sean Strickland's favor. And what I mean by that is he only needs you to take a step back once. And you see it all the time in fights. 2 people take the center of the cage, they're jockeying over the center of the cage. Nothing's really happening. And then somebody goes, okay, well, I'm good counter striking. I'll go moving backwards and we'll find our rhythm there. And then it's very hard to flip that at some point. So I see that potentially happening here, maybe 3, 4, 5. But the minute it happens, I truly believe it's going to be a downhill slope for Dricus. That's a big if he ever takes that back step, because the way he needs to fight Sean Strickland is this is your one opportunity. Like Eminem said, you only get one shot, one opportunity to make all your dreams come true or whatever, So lose yourself, man. Go forward. Do not stop. This is your moment. And that is the way he has to beat Sean Strickland, because if he takes one back step, now we're getting into Sean Strickland's world.
Yeah, because once Sean starts moving forward, right, he doesn't worry about running out of gas, right? He's just going to keep the volume up. He's not really interested in, I'll play that trade shots, I'll let you get yours, I get mine. Like, no, I'm just going to keep sticking this jab in your face. I'm going to, throw the right hand. I'm going to land, and I'm just going to come at you over and over with those shots and that volume. And you're 100% right about that. And so I think there's going to be, look, Dricus does have the power and the finishing capabilities. I mean, we saw what he did to Robert Whittaker. Like, he could come out and just absolutely dominate this fight and just look like the world's best, right? That could absolutely happen. Or you're going to see a turn of momentum, right? You're going to see, because I do believe Dricus will have that early success, as we said, but you're going to see it. I think you're going to be able to feel it. And you leaned on what it might look like, but I think you're going to be able to feel it. Just like, oh, everything just turned right there. If Sean Strickland is to win this fight, I think there will be a moment like that. I don't think Sean comes out here and dominates this from bell to bell. I think he's going to have to survive some trouble. And I'm sure he believes the same. But, Sean's the type of character that I don't think cares about that one bit. It's like he wants to be in a fight. And yeah, I mean, they already had round one, right, at T-Mobile Arena, so they're already feeling each other out a little bit.
All right, now let's get into the fun stuff. All right, the marketing machine hasn't really picked up yet. It's Tuesday. We'll see a lot more coming down the pike. Are they going to be replaying that, or are they going to walk away from it to a degree?
Oh no, it's going to be replayed. The bus incident got replayed over and over. You know, this is getting replayed over and over.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Sean Strickland did come out and say, I want to stab him.
Yeah, that was and he means it too. And the crazy thing is when Sean talks, I think that's what's so interesting about it, right? Is Sean just does not care. I mean, he has no filter whatsoever, right? And so yes, at the media day, at the press conference, like they're gonna say some crazy stuff to each other, but he means it. You know what I mean? Like it's not playing a character. It's not let me just say the wildest thing I can say to get people riled up. Like he means it. You keep talking about me, you keep talking about my childhood, you keep talking about the pain that I had to go through, I will stab you. And he means it. But I think that makes it I mean, like you and I love the tactics of the fight. You and I love the matchmaking and the brilliance and the greatness. But when it's real, it is fun. And these two, I mean, they really don't like each other. It's not even this like that personal.
I think Dricus does like them. That's the crazy part.
They're just guys that like to fight. They're just straight up alpha males who like, hey man, you talked about me and now you're 4 rows behind me. Guess what? Now you gotta live up to it. And I'm gonna ask Gilbert Burns' kids to step slightly out of the way so that nobody gets injured here. And then I'm gonna jump after you. I mean, that's a G right there, bro. That's somebody that is living it.
And again, not all heroes wear capes because this is the wildest part. And I said this last week. This is the wildest part about this whole thing. Listen. He should have been, if we're going by the law, he should have been arrested.
True.
Okay. I'm glad he wasn't, right?
Yep.
This is the world they live in. But they weren't crazed UFC star jumps and attacks another in the stands. The headlines all read, and this is how beloved Sean Strickland is now. When you go back 6 months ago, everybody was like, who is this misogynistic, borderline racist, blah, 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 right? He is so beloved now. They say, Sean Strickland moves children out of the way before. It blows my mind how much people love him now. I think me and you have been on the Strickland bandwagon for a while now, but I just crack up every time I read anything. He moves children out of the way.
That is hilarious, right? Like, I mean, yeah, technically he assaulted a man in broad daylight, but I mean, he was kind enough to make sure nobody got in the way.
45 was there. They're lucky they didn't get shot by Secret Service.
Well, that's so true, boy. If they'd have been like in that section, who'd know what happened? But it is funny, right? Because I mean, yeah, somebody else does it. You're like, oh, they can't. Sean Strickland jumped the guy. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, okay, that's Sean Strickland. I mean, yeah.
But he did move women and children out of the way. He's a very responsible psychomaniac.
He is. I love that. That is. I mean, that literally is the funniest part of it, right? I mean, it's not like he moved. Like he patiently waited. You go back and watch that tape. It's hilarious, right? You know what I mean? Like it'd be one thing if you like shoved him out of the way. He's just like, hey, can you? No, seriously. I need you. Please, can you just move? Step aside. Okay, you're clear. Now I'm kind of instantly like coming after you, man. It is hilarious, man. And again, I mean, we're talking about an assault, as you said, that should land somebody in jail, but it's like, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And I think, look, security will be on high alert this week. I don't think these two are going to do anything. I think they realize like they're getting paid on Saturday night. They both have something to prove, and they want to walk away with big paychecks and UFC titles. But, they'll be playing some mind games. There's no question about it. When they have their stare down at the press conference, when they have their stare down at the ceremonial weigh-ins, there'll be some alpha male stuff going on. I'm looking forward to it.
As the psychology, Sean Strickland is a master of psychology over people because he's just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk until he gets you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think the psychology in this has changed a little bit? Because Dricus said one thing. I've never seen Sean Strickland really triggered by anything. Obviously, his abusive childhood has triggered him in this to a degree.
It has. And I don't know that Dricus is going to continue to go down. But I mean, he certainly can. I mean, if he wants, he knows, like, I've got a way to get to, underneath the man's skin right here. You and I think we both, I've said it and I'll continue to say it. I think race, religion, family, you leave out of it. I mean, I know Dana White says it's a nasty business and people say nasty things, and I get it, but I just think there's a line that should be drawn because, again, then people start attacking each other outside of the cage, which is not what we're looking for. Because, like, listen, you talk about my wife, my children, my parents, whatever. When I see you, we have to fight, whether or not we're inside of a cage or not, right? You just can't allow that disrespect to happen. So, I don't know that Dricus is going to continue to go at him, but he knows he's gotten to him at least a little bit. You know what I mean? He knows he's at least gotten her skin, and it's there to be played. And if he feels like he needs to, and I don't think Dricus is the kind of guy that he's going to lead with that. I don't feel like that's going to be, number one. But if he feels like things aren't going his way in a verbal battle, you can imagine that he's going to come back with that. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing plays out at the press conference.
And I truly believe Dricus really likes Sean Strickland. I mean, he said it. He's like, I'm a fan of this guy. Like the way he's conducting himself and he ain't stepping back. Like, shit, man, alpha male. I respect him, but I like him. And I don't think Sean Strickland likes Dricus at all.
I would tend to agree with that from the assessment. I think Dricus looks at Sean and says, hey, man, we're guys that are cut from the same cloth, right? You know what I mean? Like we're just warriors and we're battlers, and this is what we do. We go out there and fight, and I respect it. But yeah, I think Sean is annoyed by Dricus, if we're being really honest. So I don't think the respect is necessarily reciprocated.
Sean Strickland reminds me of the guy who is going to hold a grudge forever.
Oh, forever. And and it's crazy because he has no filter, and I think he has no filter, and he doesn't care, which I think is why it's tough. I mean, you think about when he was going at it with Israel Adesanya before they were even matched up with each other, right? At that summer press conference. And it's just because he doesn't care. Like there's nothing you can say good or bad or whatever else that's going to bother him because he doesn't care. And that allows him in a verbal battle to just shoot from the hip and not care what you say whatsoever. You're not going to hurt his feelings.
He broke his UFC belt day one. He's living in a condo and he's got guns mounted on his wall, not in cases. They're sitting up there on hooks. He don't give a damn. And by the way, that person who got into a car accident down the street and hid between, he's lucky Sean Strickland didn't kill him.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And Sean has put himself in some bad situations over the years, and he's filmed it, getting in altercations and scenarios with people out on the streets, which is never good because you just don't know. They're not playing by a set of agreed upon rules. So that's not wise for anybody to participate in. But he's that guy. You're not going to get away with anything and him not say anything. So, that particular instance, that man got very lucky because I think Sean would be happy to unload with some of those firearms if he has an opportunity to do so.
All right. So, and this is no disrespect to any other fighter on the card, but it's not a loaded. I just don't believe this is a loaded card. What does that speak to? Does that speak to them thinking that Sean Strickland is a massive draw?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got two title. Yeah, you got two title fights, right? But again, I mean, in the women's bantamweight title fight, not a lot of people are just talking about that one. If we're being honest with Raquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva, there's been a lot of criticism, and it's tough. Anytime a champion walks away from a division and you crown somebody else, it's like, well, yeah, but we know you can't beat the champ, and the only reason it's there. And it just takes a while. That's just natural. That's no criticism of these two athletes in particular. It's just what always happens. It's, as you say, you're a pro wrestling guy, right? It's why you got to give the rub to the next guy, right? Because otherwise they don't get it. When the champion walks away, nobody gets to get that rub. So it makes it a little bit challenging. But you're right. I don't think this is a loaded pay-per-view. I think there's some good matchups on. I think there's some fights I want to see. Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev is a great fight.
That's actually the biggest outside of the main event. That's the one I'm looking forward to most.
I think so too. Stylistically, rankings wise, that is a meaningful fight. So I'm excited about that. But I think honestly, what it also speaks to is just the fact that it's the reality. But man, when you start, you're starting to build up UFC 300. That UFC 299 card is looking stacked. I mean, sometimes a little timing is just the way it is. I think Januaries are always tough to book fight cards, right? Because that means that the athletes are going to have to train through the holidays if they're going to compete on it. So I think a lot of people just say, January is not great for me. How about February or March? And so I think these cards are traditionally kind of tough to book. And again, when you got that looming specter of UFC 300 out there that you're kind of, trying to load up, it limits what's available to you. So I think it was just kind of a multitude of reasons here. I agree with you. I'm excited about the main event. Of course, I'm going to be watching. Of course, I'm going to be, tuned in as always. But, this is not like the highest level pay-per-view of the year. This is not, this isn't the blockbuster marquee event that you just simply cannot miss.
Yes, timing, this, that, and the other. But I happen to think that the UFC, if they said, hey, we need a little more star power on this card, they could have made it happen, right? So with that being said, did they not make it happen because they think Sean Strickland is now that next big draw?
That's interesting to see. I'll you know what? We'll have a really good gauge after this because, as you said, I mean, that headliner is driving this card. You know, a lot of times you'll have somebody underneath, you'll have a co-main event, you'll have, multiple matchups that people are talking about, where when you talk about what the success of the event was, you can't really point to one person or one fight. You just kind of say, well, the whole package together was pretty impressive. But
Right.
yeah, when this one is over, we're going to know. We're going to know where that star power is, and I think, last year was amazing. We talked about it for Sean Strickland. What an incredible rise to not only championship level, but also superstar status. I think he is that superstar. Do I think he's Conor McGregor out there, delivering pay-per-view buys? No, I don't. But we're going to have a real good indication when this thing is over of exactly where that star power, where it resides.
I think Sean Strickland's a superstar. I think he's going to drive sales. I think this week is going to be very big for promoting this fight, and Sean Strickland is going to do his part.
He definitely will. There's no question about that. Listen, the media days, if you've never paid attention to his media days before, like, he is going to say some crazy stuff, but he'll have some nuggets in there for sure. And the press conference, it'll certainly be entertaining. I don't know if he'll end up going to anybody else. I mean, the dude will talk to everybody. So, he will certainly be the one driving this. Dricus will not back down, though. Dricus will not back down one bit, man. That dude is not going to just sit there and get quiet and just say, whatever. Hey, I'll see you on Saturday night. No. He'll step up and come back at him. So it should be some fun fireworks between these two.
How awesome is it that Dricus is in this spot? Let's rewind a few years ago. I never would have ever thought that Dricus would be challenging for a title.
It's incredible where he's at, man. The fast rise to the top. I mean, Dricus was one of those guys that, like, if you're a hardcore MMA fan, you were kind of watching him out on the scene and, and seeing what he was doing internationally and go, like, that dude could be good. But you never know, man. Once, no matter what level it is. What's
tricky is it makes it his style a little like, oh, he got lucky there, or he got this, or only because, like, his style lends to people making those excuses. But he defies it every single fight. Case in point, Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, unbelievable, man. I mean, I'm looking at the rise and how fast it was. I mean, his ascension has been pretty remarkable as well, coming in on Fight Island. And I mean, really only 6-0 at this point. Not that is bad, but to be challenging for a title, he needed some things to fall his way, but he got the results. As you said, the Robert Whittaker fight, man, I think that was the one where people go, oh, okay. You look at Marcus Perez, Trevin Giles, Brad Tavares, Darren Till, even Derek Brunson. I mean, no offense to any of those gentlemen, but, just because you beat them doesn't mean immediately you need to be fighting for a title. But you beat Robert Whittaker, you finished Robert Whittaker. There's absolutely no doubt that you absolutely deserve to be fighting for a title, and he's been able to do that. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited. Like, he has a real opportunity to win this fight. As high as everybody is on Sean Strickland right now, and deservedly so, that guy has earned it. Dricus Du Plessis absolutely has an opportunity to win this fight.
And I'm looking forward to it. I do not know. Like, usually me and you could say, I'm leaning this way, I'm leaning this way. I'm not leaning any way in this fight. I'm not leaning anyway. And very rarely is that the case for me.
I agree, man. It's hard. And those are the fights I enjoy the most, where I'm just like, I really don't know what's going to happen. All I know is that, to me, this is a 50-50 fight. I know the odds are a little bit off of that, but, the name values with Sean Strickland, there's no doubt about it. Drick is still kind of a new commodity to a lot of people, but I love the stylistic matchup. And again, I think Dricus is going to have some early success, but is he able to put things away with that early success? Or is Sean able to survive that early storm? A guy that's been in combat that is not, you're not going to overwhelm him with anything. You're not going to show him anything he hasn't seen before, because not only do you look at what his fight record is, but the man literally has thousands of rounds of sparring, has gone in there with everybody, notoriously hard sparring rounds as well. You know what I mean? I mean, it just fights that he's had in the gym. The dude has seen everything. Is he going to survive that? And can he turn the tide? Can he get the momentum shift? Can he create that back step from Dricus? We're going to see, man. We're going to see. I love it. I absolutely love it. And yeah, I'm fired up. And then we're going to get Adesanya back at some point this year. And then there's just still big names in the middleweight division. There's a lot of big fights out there, but this is as big as it gets right now. I'm excited for this one.
Well, everybody tune in this Saturday from Toronto, Canada, UFC 297, Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis. And is it kind of weird that every time you have to say Dricus's name, you either say Dricus or you have to say the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean,
it just rolls off the tongue.
It's just, hey, it's poetry, man. It's poetry. You got to say the whole thing.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. You guys can check it out this weekend. UFC pay-per-view. It's always a big time. I'm looking forward to, I think yesterday, the first Embedded came out. I haven't got a chance to watch it yet. I like to wait till around Thursday or Friday and binge them all together.
I'm the same way. I watched the countdown last night, actually, and it got me fired up to a different level. I mean, just, seeing the training and the conversations and just getting, reminded of everything and all the storylines we've done too. But I'm the same way as you with Embedded. I like to kind of binge them late in the week so you kind of see the whole week at once, you know what I mean? And kind of really get that feel for it. So I'm excited for it. Yeah, a lot of people will be arriving. Dricus, obviously coming from South Africa, he had been in town early, to get used to the time change and all that. But, most everybody else will be traveling in today, and then media day Wednesday, press conference Thursday, weigh-ins Friday, and all leads to Saturday, the big fights.
Other than watching the fights, what you got going on this weekend?
Hanging out, man. Glad to be back in town. I mean, a lot of traveling. Even though the UFC was off, man, we had a lot of CFFC events, and I just got back from Belgium as well, where I did an event over there, which was a lot of fun. So I'm kind of sad I won't be there on Saturday night in Toronto, but also I've seen the weather reports up there, and I'm kind of happy I'm not going to be out there because it is freezing out there. And I'm happy to be in Las Vegas where it's, 50 degrees at least right now. So I'll be enjoying a little time at home. It's nice to have a few weeks at home.
Roger that. I'll be digging out here in Memphis, Tennessee. We never get snow. We got 6 inches, zero infrastructure to plow roads, salt roads. Like, we don't have any of that. So when something like this happens, it shuts the city down. Kids are home from school, driving me batshit crazy. Plus I'm dealing with a cold, the whole 9 yards. But hopefully it gets above freezing here in the next couple days.
Man, I hated to hear you cough, but I'm glad I'm not the only one that's sick, man. This thing is just going around, man. I've been weeks to get rid of this cough, man. Hopefully everything's good.
It's bad. It's bad right there. So for everybody out there, stay healthy. For John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.